My mother-in-law faked a terminal illness to ruin our honeymoon. The call came 3 hours into our honeymoon. My mother-in-law was in the hospital, terminal cancer, 6 months to live. My husband was shattered, sobbing into the hotel phone while I packed our bags in numb silence. We cut our trip short, flew home, and spent the next 3 weeks sleeping on our couch, waiting for the end. Except the end never came. Her doctor was confused. Her test results were normal. She'd faked everything because she couldn't stand us being away, couldn't stand me having her son all to myself. And when I confronted her, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you were a better wife, he wouldn't have left. You made me do this." My husband didn't believe me, not at first, but I had the hospital records, I had the voicemails, and I had a burning rage that wasn't going anywhere. Let me start at the beginning because I need you to understand just how much this woman took from us. My name is Allison, and I'd been married to Nathan for exactly 3 days when Helen called. 3 days. We'd spent 18 months planning our wedding, months of choosing flowers, tasting cakes, arguing over guest lists, and navigating Helen's constant interference. She'd tried to change our venue. She'd tried to add 30 guests to our already tight list. She'd even tried to pick my wedding dress, showing up at the bridal shop with a garment bag full of options she'd chosen herself. I'd handled it all with what I thought was grace. I smiled through her criticisms of my centerpieces. I nodded along when she told me my flowers were too casual. I thanked her for the help she offered, even when the help felt like a knife between my shoulder blades. But through it all, I kept telling myself that she was just excited, just nervous, just a mother who loved her son too much to let him go. Nathan had lost his father at 16, and Helen had raised him alone. She'd sacrificed everything for him, her career, her social life, her entire identity. I understood why she was protective. I understood why she had a hard time letting go. What I didn't understand was how far she was willing to go to make sure I never truly took her place. The honeymoon was supposed to be our escape. 2 weeks in Bali, just the two of us. No family, no drama, no obligations. I'd saved for months to afford it, working extra freelance projects and skipping lunches to tuck away every dollar. Nathan had been just as committed, picking up overtime shifts and selling his vintage guitar collection to help fund the trip. We'd made it to the hotel, unpacked our bags, and ordered room service. I remember standing on the balcony, looking out at the ocean, feeling like the luckiest woman in the world. Nathan had come up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, and whispered how happy he was. "I love you," he'd said. "I love that you're my wife." Those words were still echoing in my head when his phone buzzed, and everything changed. Helen's number flashed on the screen. Nathan answered with a smile, expecting a quick congratulations or a request for a postcard. Instead, his face drained of color. His hand started shaking. "Mom, slow down. What do you mean, the hospital?" I watched him listen, his eyes growing wider, more panicked than his breath caught in his throat. His hand flew to his mouth. "6 months?" He choked out. No, that can't be right. That can't." The phone slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the tile floor. He was sobbing now, big, heaving sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep in his chest. I'd never seen him like this. I rushed to him, wrapped my arms around him, tried to make sense of his garbled words. "She's dying," he finally managed. "Cancer. It's everywhere." 6 months. She has 6 months. I felt the world tilt beneath me. 6 months. Nathan's mother, the woman who'd raised him alone, who'd sacrificed everything for him, was dying. And we were thousands of miles away, sipping champagne on a balcony. "We have to go back," Nathan said, pulling away from me. "We have to go home. I can't be here while she's alone. I can't." "Nathan, we can book a flight now," he insisted. "We need to leave now." I didn't argue. How could I? He was grieving, raw and open, his whole world collapsing in real time. I called the front desk, arranged a taxi to the airport, and began throwing our clothes back into suitcases. The beautiful villa we'd booked, with its infinity pool and ocean views, suddenly felt like a cage. We had to get out. We had to get home. The flight back was a blur of sleepless hours and silent tears. Nathan couldn't stop talking about his mother, about all the things he wished he'd said, all the time he'd wasted. He told me about the summer she'd worked 2 jobs so he could go to soccer camp, about the night he'd gotten his college acceptance letter and she'd cried for hours, about the way she'd held his hand at his father's funeral and promised him they'd survive. "She's never been alone," he said. "Not really. She had me. But now she's going to die alone, Allison. She's going to die." And I wasn't there. I held him and told him it would be okay. I told him we'd be there for her, every step of the way. I told him we'd make her last months count. I had no idea that every word I said was exactly what Helen wanted to hear. We arrived back in the city at 3 in the morning. Nathan wanted to go straight to the hospital, but I convinced him to get some sleep first. We'd be useless to her, exhausted and wrecked. He reluctantly agreed, collapsing into bed with his phone clutched in his hand, ready for any update. The next morning, we went to the hospital. Helen was in a private room, propped up on pillows, looking pale and fragile in a way I'd never seen before. The moment she saw Nathan, her face crumpled. She reached out her arms and he went to her, sobbing into her shoulder. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there." "It's not your fault, sweetheart," she murmured, stroking his hair. "You're here now. That's all that matters." I hung back by the door, feeling like an intruder. This was their moment, and I wasn't part of it. I didn't belong in this tableau of mother and son, united against the greatest challenge of their lives. Eventually, Nathan pulled back and gestured for me to come closer. I approached hesitantly, offering Helen a weak smile. "I'm so sorry, Helen. I said. We came as soon as we heard. Helen's eyes flicked to me, and for just a fraction of a second, I saw something I couldn't quite identify. It wasn't pain. It wasn't sadness. It was something sharper, more calculating. Then it was gone, replaced by that same fragile, grateful expression. Thank you, dear, she said, her voice weak and trembling. It means so much that you both came home. There was something about the way she said came home that made my skin prickle, like she'd orchestrated the whole thing, like she'd known exactly what she was doing. I shook the thought away. This woman was dying. I was being paranoid. The first week was chaos. We moved into Helen's house so Nathan could be with her around the clock. I took over cooking, cleaning, and coordinating with the medical team. I sat in on appointments, took notes on medications, and researched treatment options late into the night. I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to prove to Helen that I was worthy of her son. She didn't make it easy. You're using too much salt, she'd say from the couch, her voice frail but her eyes sharp. Nathan has high blood pressure. You should know that. These pillows are too firm, she'd complain as I arranged them behind her back. Don't you understand that I need comfort right now? Real comfort? Your mother called, she told me one afternoon, her voice dripping with condescension. She seems lovely, so different from you. I wonder where you got your personality. I smiled through all of it. I smiled because Nathan was watching and I didn't want to create tension. I smiled because she was dying, and what kind of monster argues with a dying woman? I smiled because I'd been taught that family forgives, that family endures, that family sticks together no matter what. But somewhere, deep in the pit of my stomach, a voice kept whispering, something is wrong. The first red flag came during a medical appointment. Helen's oncologist, a calm woman named Dr. Reed, was reviewing her treatment plan. She mentioned a medication I'd never heard of, and I asked about its purpose. Dr. Reed paused. I'm sorry, which medication? The one you prescribed for the tumor, I said. The one you mentioned last week. Dr. Reed looked confused. She glanced at Helen, then back at me. I haven't prescribed any medication for a tumor. Helen is in the early stages of testing. We haven't confirmed anything yet. I stared at her. But she said, I think I need to rest. Helen interrupted, her voice suddenly weak and trembling. I'm feeling unwell. Allison, could you step out? I was escorted from the room by a nurse, my mind racing. Helen hadn't confirmed anything, but she'd been so certain. She told us the cancer was everywhere. She told us she had 6 months. She'd told us. I shook my head. Maybe I'd heard wrong. Maybe there was some confusion. Maybe Dr. Reed was just being cautious. The second red flag came when I found Helen's medical file on the coffee table. I hadn't meant to snoop, but it was just sitting there, open to a page I couldn't ignore. I flipped through it quickly, my heart pounding. There was no diagnosis, no cancer, no terminal illness, just a note about mild high blood pressure and a referral for a routine checkup. I stared at the page, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. This couldn't be right. She'd told us she was dying. She'd called us home from our honeymoon. She'd spent 3 weeks making us wait on her hand and foot. I confronted her that night after Nathan had gone to bed. I found her in the living room, watching television with a glass of wine in her hand. She didn't look frail. She didn't look sick. She looked perfectly fine. What is this? I asked, dropping the file on the table in front of her. Helen glanced at it, then back at the television. You shouldn't have looked at that. It's private. Private? You've been lying to us for 3 weeks. You told us you were dying. She set down her wine glass with deliberate slowness. Then she turned to me, and there it was again. That cold, calculating look I'd seen in the hospital. I did what I had to do, she said calmly. Nathan wasn't listening to me. He was obsessed with you, with the wedding, with the honeymoon. He'd forgotten about his mother. I had to remind him. Remind him? You committed fraud. You faked a terminal illness. I did what any mother would do, she said, her voice rising slightly. I protected my son from a woman who was taking him away from me. The words hung in the air between us, ugly and sharp. I felt something inside me crack, some fragile hope that maybe Helen was just difficult, not malicious. How could you do this to him? I whispered. How could you put him through that kind of grief? He thought you were dying. He's been destroyed. Helen stood up, and for a moment, she was the tallest person in the room. I did what I had to do, she repeated. And if you were a better wife, he wouldn't have left. You made me do this. You made me desperate. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. I was too shocked, too angry, too shattered to form a coherent thought, so I did the only thing I could do. I walked out of the room and called Nathan. Nathan answered the phone with sleep-heavy confusion. Allison, what's wrong? Come downstairs, now. I need to show you something. He shuffled into the living room a few minutes later, rubbing his eyes. Helen was gone, having retreated to her bedroom the moment she heard Nathan's footsteps. I was still standing in the middle of the room, the medical file clutched in my hands. What's going on? Nathan asked, yawning. Is Mom okay? She's fine, I said, my voice shaking. She's been fine this whole time. Nathan frowned. What are you talking about? Look. I thrust the file at him. This is her medical file. There's no cancer, no diagnosis, no terminal illness. She's been lying to us, Nathan, about everything. Nathan took the file, flipping through it with slow, confused movements. I watched his face as the truth began to dawn. He went pale, then red, then pale again. This can't be right, he said. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake, I said firmly. I confronted her. She admitted it. She faked the whole thing because she wanted us to come home. Nathan looked at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. That's insane. She wouldn't. She couldn't. She did, I interrupted. She told me I made her do it, because I'm apparently not a good enough wife to deserve you. I could see him wrestling with it, the desire to believe his mother warring with the evidence in his hands. The file was right there. The dates, the test results, the absence of anything resembling a terminal diagnosis. It was all right there. Mom, he called out. Mom, come here. Helen appeared in the doorway, still wearing her pajamas. She looked calm, collected, like she'd been expecting this moment. Nathan, honey, let me explain. Explain what? He demanded, his voice cracking. Explain how you faked a terminal illness? Explain how you made us cut our honeymoon short? Explain how you've been lying to me for 3 weeks? Helen stepped forward, her hands extended in a placating gesture. I did it for you, sweetheart. I was losing you. I could feel it. You were so wrapped up in her that you forgot about me. I just wanted your attention. I just wanted you to remember I existed. By telling me you were dying? Nathan's voice broke. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Do you have any idea how many nights I stayed up crying? How many times I begged God to spare you? And it was all a lie. Helen's face hardened. I didn't have a choice. She was taking you away from me. I had to do something. She wasn't taking me away, Nathan said, his voice rising. I'm her husband. I chose her. That was my choice. And you couldn't accept it. So you decided to destroy our honeymoon and make me feel like the worst son in the world. I raised you, Helen said, her voice trembling with anger. I gave up everything for you. And this is how you repay me? By choosing her over me? Mom, you're not the only person in my life anymore, Nathan said. You're not the center of my universe. I have a wife now. And I made vows to her. I promised to love her, to cherish her, to put her first. And I meant every word. Helen's face crumpled. She looked like a child who'd just had her favorite toy taken away. You're choosing her over your own mother? I'm choosing to live my life, Nathan said. And you can either be part of it, with boundaries, or you can be out of it entirely. But I am done with the lies. I am done with the manipulation. I am done. Helen stared at him, her expression shifting from anger to disbelief to something that looked almost like fear. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more in my life. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. I stood frozen, watching the two people I loved most in the world tear each other apart. Part of me wanted to step in, to mediate, to find a way for everyone to heal. But another part of me, the part that had been living with Helen's cruelty for years, was relieved. Finally, someone was standing up to her. Finally, she was facing consequences. Helen retreated to her bedroom without another word. Nathan stood in the middle of the living room, his chest heaving, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. I went to him and wrapped my arms around him. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry. I can't believe she did this, he said into my hair. All this time, I thought she was just difficult. I never thought she'd do something this calculated, this cruel. She loves you, I said. She just doesn't know how to love healthily. Nathan pulled back and looked at me. I need to call the rest of the family. They need to know what happened. She was making us all believe she was dying. So he made the calls. One by one, he reached out to his aunts, his uncles, his cousins, explaining what his mother had done. Some were shocked. Others admitted they'd suspected something was off. A few even confessed that Helen had a history of creating drama for attention. We always thought it was just her personality, his Aunt Marie said. We never thought she'd go this far. The days that followed were a blur of recriminations and fallout. Helen stayed in her bedroom, refusing to speak to anyone. Nathan moved his things back to our apartment, and I followed, grateful to be out of her house. We tried to salvage the last week of our honeymoon, booking a weekend getaway to a nearby bed and breakfast, but the magic was gone. Then the voicemails started. Helen had always been persistent, but this was something else entirely. She called Nathan 15 times in one day, then 20, then 30. She left voicemails alternating between tearful apologies and furious accusations. She begged him to come back. She threatened to disown him. She told him he was dead to her. She told him she loved him more than life itself. Nathan listened to each one with a grim expression. He didn't return any of them. I can't talk to her, he said. Not yet. I need space. I need time to figure out what I want. I supported his decision completely, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Helen was just getting started. The woman who'd faked a terminal illness to control her son wasn't going to give up that easily. I was right. A week after the fallout, Nathan's phone buzzed with a text from his Aunt Marie. His mother had been hospitalized again. This time she was claiming chest pains. She'd told everyone she was having a heart attack. Nathan stared at the message for a long moment. Then he set the phone down and walked away. I'm not going, he said. This is just another tactic. She's trying to pull me back in. But what if it's real? I asked, not because I believed it, but because I had to ask. Then she'll have to deal with it without me, he said. I can't be her emotional crutch anymore. I can't keep running back every time she needs attention. I watched him closely, looking for signs of doubt or hesitation. There weren't any. He looked tired, angry, and completely certain of his decision. 2 days later, Helen left the hospital. The chest pains had been stress-related, nothing more. She'd called everyone in the family, including me, and left messages begging us to come see her. Nathan still didn't respond. He's ignoring me, she said to me over the phone, her voice dripping with indignation. His own mother. And you're the reason why. Helen, I'm not going to have this conversation, I said. If you have something to say it to Nathan. You turned him against me. You're the worst thing that ever happened to my family. I'm hanging up now. Please don't call me again. It was the first time I'd ever hung up on her. My hands were shaking and my heart was racing, but I felt strangely liberated. I didn't owe her anything. I didn't have to be the bigger person anymore. I was allowed to protect myself. The final confrontation came a week later. Helen showed up at our apartment, unannounced, with a bouquet of flowers in her hands and a smile on her face. She looked like she'd just won a prize. "Hello, Allison," she said as I opened the door. "I'm here to see my son." "Nathan doesn't want to see you," I said, blocking the entrance. "He doesn't know what he wants," she said smoothly. "He's confused. He'll come around." "He always does." I stared at her. This woman who'd faked a terminal illness, who'd ruined our honeymoon, who'd spent weeks manipulating and gaslighting and lying. And I realized in that moment that she would never change. She would never get better. She would always find new ways to insert herself into our lives. "You need to leave," I said. "And if you ever show up here again, I'm calling the police." Helen's smile faltered. "You wouldn't do that. Try me." She pushed past me and walked into the apartment. Nathan, come here. I need to talk to you." Nathan appeared in the doorway of the bedroom, his face pale with shock and anger. "What are you doing here?" "I came to apologize," Helen said, her voice turning sweet and trembling. "I know I made mistakes. I know I acted badly, but I'm your mother, Nathan. You have to forgive me. You faked a terminal illness," Nathan said, his voice flat. "You ruined my honeymoon. You tried to destroy my marriage." "I was scared," she said. "I was so scared of losing you. Can't you understand that?" "I understand that you need help," Nathan said. "Professional help. And until you get it, I can't have you in my life. It's not healthy for me, and it's not healthy for Allison." Helen's face crumbled. "You're really going to cut me off? Your own mother?" "I'm going to protect my marriage," Nathan said. "That's what you taught me to do, remember? Protect what matters most." Helen stared at him for a long moment, searching for any crack in his resolve. There was none. Then, slowly, she turned and walked toward the door. "You'll regret this," she said as she left. "Both of you." And then she was gone. The weeks that followed were quiet. Helen stopped calling. The family stopped taking sides. Life settled into something approaching normal. Nathan and I took a real honeymoon. A short trip to a cabin in the mountains. No phones, no drama, just us. We talked a lot during that trip about what we'd been through, what we wanted for the future, how we were going to protect our marriage from outside interference. We made plans for therapy, for boundaries, for a life that didn't revolve around Helen's constant demands. I knew somewhere deep down that Helen would eventually try again. She'd find another way to insert herself, another crisis to manufacture, another manipulation to attempt. But I also knew we were ready for her. Months later, I received a letter from Helen. It was handwritten in elegant cursive, and it arrived without warning. I opened it with trembling fingers, bracing myself for another round of accusations. Instead, the words were different. "I've been in therapy," she wrote. "I've been diagnosed with a personality disorder. It doesn't excuse what I did, but it explains it. I'm sorry for the hurt I caused. I'm sorry for the lies. I'm sorry for everything." I read the letter 3 times, searching for the manipulation, the guilt trip, the hidden agenda. It wasn't there. She was just... "Sorry," I showed the letter to Nathan. He read it in silence, then set it down. "What do you think?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "I think she's trying, but I also think I can't just let her back into my life without proof that she's changed. And that's going to take time." We decided to respond with a simple message. We were open to a relationship, but only with boundaries, and only if she stayed in therapy. We'd start with small visits, supervised, and see how things went. It wasn't a perfect solution. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, but it was a start. And as I sat on the couch in our apartment, Nathan's arm around my shoulders, watching the sunset through the window, I realized something profound. We'd survived. We'd weathered the storm, come out the other side, and built something stronger than Helen's cruelty had ever been able to destroy. We'd built a marriage that was unshakable. And that, I realized, was the greatest victory of all.